human-caused extinction correlating with the Industrial Revolution. HIPCO is one of the best things to help you out on an FRQ. You can tie HIPCO into almost every FRQ that they give you. Today we're looking at threatened or endangered species and what are some of the reasons that they become threatened or endangered. But we want to tie it back to humans. Okay, so hunting, we can overhunt, remove a species from an ecosystem. Having a limited diet. Now that's not exactly human caused, but what is human caused is if we remove their source of food. We've talked about the problems of invasive species and how humans have screwed that up by moving species around. And of course, if their habitat, if they are specialists in their habitat, well, we've been really good at destroying their habitats. So humans are directly responsible for this increase in endangered species. And when we apply pressure by removing their source of diet or their habitat, we have forced them to change their behaviors, called selective pressure, when they have to adjust or die. HIPCO is an acronym for 6 different ways that humans affect biodiversity. H stands for habitat loss. So classic examples of this would be deforestation for either lumber or agriculture. We literally destroy that land for generations. Another cause of habitat loss is sprawl, urbanization. Here you're looking at Las Vegas, which is built in a place not really meant to house humans anyway. It's in the middle of a desert. And so we are really pushing that environment, that ecosystem to the max to make sure people have water and good living conditions. You can see how much Las Vegas has exploded in only 20 years. Absolutely filling up that desert. Invasive species. The cane toad is your best example for this one. Humans moved the cane toad because of its toxins, and it has now taken over the entire northeast coast of Australia and is expected to move around the entire shore, basically. The gray squirrel, which was taken over to England and outcompeted the red squirrel. These are classic examples I keep naming because hopefully you'll remember them in May. P, the first P, population growth, urbanization because of our exponentially growing population. We have passed up 7 billion. We're on our way to 8, and we will be at 9 billion in your lifetime. Remember, it's better to grow up as a city than out. High rises is one solution to some of this population growth. Higher population density. However, in the time of COVID, that's a bad thing. Population density during a disease outbreak is not good. The second P, pollution. On the right, we've got agricultural runoff, the fertilizers that run off of our fields, and they eventually make their way through the ecosystem, through the watershed, and they cause eutrophication, algal blooms, which then suffocate, take all the oxygen out of the water. Climate change. Not just the normal things that happen over long cycles like El Nino, human-caused climate change. The main example here you need to know would be fossil fuels. And that is the correlation with the Industrial Revolution. So burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, to make electricity, to power our vehicles, causing dramatic weather events, fires, flooding, hurricanes, the melting of the sea ice, which of course ties back to habitat loss, overharvesting, tragedy of the commons, those cattle that overgraze the field. But this could apply to hunting. This could apply to minerals, mining, which I have on the bottom right. That's the Appalachian Mountains, which are gorgeous. And there is a process called mountaintop removal. Are we that desperate for coal and energy that we have to take the top of a mountain off? Wouldn't you call that over-harvesting the planet? And a lot of times overharvesting replies to the fishing industry. So this is what happens when humans impact ecosystems and biodiversity. So what can we do about it? To stop HIPCO, we need to address every single one of those issues. But some more immediate things we can do is to make laws, criminalize poaching. We can enact legislation to protect where they live, coming up with ways to not fragment their habitat. Okay, there are a handful of laws that they could potentially ask you about on the AP exam. And this is the very first one we've had this year. The Endangered Species Act goes all the way back to 1973. Even I wasn't born yet. Okay, so this is actually run by a branch of the government called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's a pretty daunting task to bring a species back from the brink. So it's way easier to destroy one, you're right, than to actually save one. So I would argue that a 3% success rate is pretty amazing. So this is some extra legislation which goes after poachers, people who trade things like ivory, which I have in the picture down below. Some argue that CITES is a problem because then it forces it to be a black market.